You don't actually have a motivation problem. You think you do, but you don't. Because if motivation was the issue, you wouldn't feel this constant frustration sitting in your chest. You wouldn't lie in bed at night thinking, I know I can do more, so why am I not doing it? That feeling right there. That's not laziness, that's something else. And it's the exact reason most people stay stuck. Forever. It usually doesn't start dramatically. It's small, quiet, almost invisible. You wake up a little tired. You tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow. You scroll a little longer. You delay one small thing, and nothing breaks. Your life doesn't collapse. No alarms go off. So your brain learns something dangerous. This is fine, and that's where it begins. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Staying stuck doesn't feel like failure, it feels like comfort. That's why it's so hard to notice. You're not in pain. You're just slightly off, slightly behind, slightly disconnected. And because it's not extreme, you tolerate it. Be honest for a second. Does that feel familiar? You tell yourself you'll change when you feel ready, when you have clarity, when the timing is right, when you're in the mood. But that moment never comes, not because you're incapable, but because your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do. Protect you. From discomfort, from uncertainty, from risk. And growth, unfortunately, feels like all three. So instead of moving forward, you stay in place, not stuck physically, but mentally, emotionally. You start overthinking simple things. Replying to a message feels heavy. Starting a task feels overwhelming. Even making decisions feels exhausting. And the weird part? You know it shouldn't be this hard, but it is, so you assume something must be wrong with you. I used to think that too, that maybe I just didn't have discipline, that maybe some people are built for progress, and some aren't. Most people won't admit this part, but have you ever quietly wondered if you're just not one of those people? But this is where things change, because the truth is, you're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because you've trained yourself to stay stuck, without realizing it, every time you avoid something uncomfortable, every time you choose easy over necessary, every time you delay action, you reinforce a pattern, and patterns become identity. Think about it. If every day you hesitate, if every day you overthink, if every day you delay, at some point it stops feeling like a habit. It starts feeling like who you are. I'm just not consistent. I'm not disciplined. I always mess things up. But those aren't truths. They're conclusions, built from repetition. And that's the trap, because once you believe that, you stop trying fully, not consciously, but subtly. You lower your expectations. You play it safe. You avoid situations where you might fail again. Because failure doesn't just hurt anymore. It confirms the story you already believe. And that's when people really get stuck. Not when they fail, but when they stop seeing themselves as someone who can win. Here's a question most people never ask themselves. What if nothing changes? Not next week. Not next year. 5 years from now. Same patterns. Same hesitation. Same frustration. How does that feel? Don't answer quickly. Sit with it. Because deep down, you already know something. You know this isn't where you're supposed to stay. You know there's more in you. That's why this bothers you. That's why you can't fully relax in this state. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Knowing isn't enough. Awareness alone doesn't change anything. You can watch videos, read books, understand everything, and still stay exactly where you are. So what actually keeps people stuck forever? It's not lack of knowledge. It's not lack of potential. It's something much quieter, much more subtle. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Wait till you hear this, because the real reason you're stuck isn't what you've been told. It's something you've been doing every single day, without noticing. And here's the part most people avoid. because it sounds too simple, too small, too underwhelming. But this is where everything changes. You don't get unstuck by making a huge move. You don't suddenly wake up one day and become a completely different person. That's the fantasy. That's what keeps people waiting. Real change feels almost invisible. It starts with one decision that nobody else sees. One action that doesn't feel impressive. One moment where you choose differently, even though it's uncomfortable. And at first, it won't feel powerful. It won't feel like progress. It might even feel pointless. Because your brain is used to intensity, big plans, big goals, big expectations. But your life, it changes through repetition, through small, consistent shifts. And that's where people mess up. They underestimate small actions, while overestimating motivation. But this is where it gets real. Think about the version of you that feels stuck. What do they do daily? They hesitate, they delay, they avoid discomfort. Now flip it. What would a slightly different version of you do? Not perfect, not extreme, just 1% different. Maybe they start even when they don't feel ready. Maybe they finish something small instead of abandoning it. Maybe they sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. That's it, not dramatic, but powerful. Because identity doesn't change through intention, it changes through evidence. You don't become confident by thinking differently. You become confident by acting differently, repeatedly. And that's when something shifts, quietly, internally. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start realizing, "I'm already doing it." And here's the crazy part. Once that shift happens, momentum begins, not explosive, but steady. You start trusting yourself a little more. You stop overthinking every step. You don't need perfect conditions anymore because you've proven something to yourself. You can move, even when it's uncomfortable. Now let me ask you something honestly. Which one are you right now? Still waiting, or slowly starting? Because both feel similar in the beginning, but they lead to completely different lives. And that's when it hits you. You were never stuck because you couldn't move. You were stuck because you kept choosing not to. Not consciously, not intentionally, but through patterns, through habits, through comfort. And once you see that, you can't blame motivation anymore. You can't wait for the right time, because you realize something powerful. The only thing that was keeping you stuck was the version of you that avoided discomfort. And the moment you step slightly outside that, even in the smallest way, you break the cycle. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to create change, enough to build momentum, enough to prove that you're not who you thought you were. And from there, everything else follows. But here's what nobody tells you. You don't need to fix your entire life. You just need to stop reinforcing the version of you that's stuck. That's it. One different choice today. One uncomfortable action. One moment where you don't escape. Because that's how you rewrite identity. Not in one big leap, but in quiet, consistent proof. And over time, you won't even recognize the person who used to feel stuck. Not because life became easy, but because you became someone who moves anyway. So if this felt real to you, don't ignore it, not this time. Because the difference between staying stuck and finally moving forward is smaller than you think. And it starts right here.